What's going on, guys? It's Untold. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about what the Benadryl high is like, what that experience is all about. That way you guys do not have to try this shit out in your lives because it is a miserable experience. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. If you do, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Yeah, let's get this shit going. Now, I will preface this by saying that Benadryl is not a drug that any of you guys should ever consider trying, because it is just not good for you, like in any sense of in any sense of the word. Like, it is so bad for your brain. It has probably reduced maybe 15 years off my lifespan. It's not good for your liver. It's not good for your kidneys. It's not good for any part of your body. It's never something that you should ever do. But that's what I'm here for, guys, is making sure you guys don't have to try these things. Let me be the guinea pig testing this shit out for you so you know exactly what it's like, so you don't have to experiment and do this bullshit yourselves. Now, the first step of tripping on Benadryl is, of course, acquiring the Benadryl. And this doesn't seem like a hard task, considering it's in every single like CVS, fucking pharmacy, every single like drugstore. It's fucking everywhere. It doesn't seem like it's a hard thing to do. But consider that in a lot of states nowadays, you have to be 18 to buy both Benadryl and DXM. And honestly, the vast majority of the people who are probably trying to trip on Benadryl are high schoolers and people who are just desperate. So there's probably a good chance that you're not over the age of 18 when you're trying to buy this shit. So you either have to steal it, which I have done in the past, or you need to order some shit on like Uber Eats, like a pharmacy. You have to Uber Eats from a pharmacy, Uber like Instacart from a pharmacy, or like even fucking DoorDash or something. Just anywhere where you can get that shit delivered and they don't charge you. That's what you got to do, is that kind of shit. Now, once you've acquired the Benadryl, you're gonna find out pretty fucking quick that you're gonna need to take a decent fucking bit of this shit in order to have the effect. Like, there's a calculator online where you plug in your weight and it tells you like what like the dosages you need to hit like the different like levels of trip. And that's a pretty handy calculator that I used to use, but honestly, I would just disregard most of the time and just take like an arbitrary amount. Like, I wouldn't even try to fucking like do it, like actually dose it correctly. I would just do like a random fucking amount of it and hope for the fucking best, which is an awful idea. And you shouldn't do Benadryl in general, but if you are gonna do Benadryl, don't do what I did. At least use the fucking calculator so you're at least a little bit safe. The calculator is going to give you guys different dosages for different levels of Benadryl trip that you can experience. And there are 4 different levels of Benadryl trip. It goes level 1 through level 4, and then there's a 5th level that is obviously something that nobody in this world should ever do. It's called Ereal, and think of a K-hole but for deliriants such as Benadryl. And let me just cover what a deliriant is real quick. A deliriant is a class of psychedelic, but it's not like a typical psychedelic like acid or shrooms. It is a psychedelic that produces photorealistic and hyperrealistic hallucinations that are very hard to distinguish from reality. Usually when you're tripping on acid or shrooms or something like that, like, you can very easily distinguish what reality is from what from what the drug is making you experience. Benadryl, on the other hand, if you take a high enough dose, the hallucinations that you see will be so realistic that you will have no ability to distinguish them from reality, and that's fucking scary. Once you get to a high enough dose, that effect starts to happen, and you can start doing crazy shit. Like, it just turns into a whole fucking fiasco once you get to that fucking level. There are other deliriants that people will do, but Benadryl is the most like common one that people abuse, because the other ones are like kind of hard to obtain. Like, you're never like Datura, like nobody's really getting Datura, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of hard to find that kind of shit. But Benadryl is available in literally every pharmacy, so it is so accessible for anybody who wants to do it. At the lower doses, Benadryl sort of just, honestly, it feels kind of like weed, at least to me. At the really low doses, it kind of gives me a sense of euphoria. It makes colors kind of bright. It makes me kind of like just smile a little bit. Like, at the lower doses, of course. Like, once you get to the higher ones, it is nothing like that. But at the lower doses, you're like, you just kind of like enjoy reality. Like, you'll be walking outside off a low dose, and you'll look at the trees, and they'll kind of have like a nice little shine, a little outline to them, and it just looks really nice, and you start to enjoy it, and you just have a nice smile on your face. You're happy. Feels like you got a slight sense of euphoria. And one big negative to Benadryl, especially at the lower doses, from what I've noticed, is that your short-term memory gets absolutely fucked. Like, holy shit. Like, one time I took, like, I forget how much, probably like a 400, 500 milligram dose, and that seems like a lot if you know about Benadryl, for a low dose, that seems for somebody calling 500 milligrams of Benadryl a low dose is kind of crazy. But I do have a little bit of like, I have a lot more body weight than most people, so I take a lot more of substances to feel the exact same effect that they would. So imagine a 500 milligram trip for me is probably like a 250, 300 milligram trip for somebody else. But one time I took about, I think, 500 milligrams of Benadryl and went out with a friend. And at first I was fine, but me and him started talking, and I would just forget the conversation midway through. Like, we'd be having a fully normal conversation, and then I would just completely blank and forget what we were talking about and have to ask him what we were talking about. And that was immediately sus to him because I didn't tell him that I was tripping. I literally just fucking, I literally just would forget conversations and have to ask, like, what were we talking about? And I would just, or either that, or I would just start fucking, like, talking about random shit unrelated, thinking that's what we were talking about. Like, it fucks up your short-term memory so bad. And that's something you'll notice if you do Benadryl, especially at the lower doses. That's when you'll notice it more. Because at the lower doses, you're not hallucinating, so you'll actually notice the effects to like your memory and to like your cognition and shit. But once you get to the higher ones, you start tripping, you're not actually gonna like notice those kind of effects to your short-term memory. You're just gonna be focusing on the actual hallucinations. But once you get past the low dose trip end of Benadryl, where it's at least somewhat enjoyable, you start getting into the actual hallucination end of Benadryl, the delirium end of Benadryl, and that shit's scary. One time I took, I think, roughly a 900 milligram to a 1,000 milligram dose. I don't remember exactly how much I took, and you'll figure out why, because Benadryl does fuck up your memory, and it is absolutely crazy the shit you see. But I don't remember much of this night except for a couple things. But I do remember hearing voices, seeing shadow figures, seeing spiders, and seeing flies swarming around me. And holy shit, it is scary as fuck. Like, you're sitting there, and like, I've never gotten to the point with Benadryl that I cannot distinguish them from reality. That's mainly what Ariel is in like the really, really, really high dose trips. That's when you can't distinguish them from reality. Like, I was at least able to somewhat figure out that what I was seeing and hearing wasn't real. But when you get to those really, 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 really high dose trips, you're going to start realizing that you cannot figure out what's real and what's not. And that's scary because you'll start making decisions and making actions based on things that are not there. Like, you could like literally walk outside, not know you're outside, and get run over by a fucking car. It's fucking crazy. Like, shit like that is the reason why you should never do this fucking drug. But on this high dose trip, I experienced some of the most vivid, most realistic hallucinations I've ever experienced in my life off of any drug. And those hallucinations were fucking scary. Like, one of them was I was sitting at my computer in the fucking dark, and I started seeing flies swarming around me, and I kept fucking hitting them. Like, I kept trying to slap my arm. Like, they would land on my arm or my hand. I would take my other hand, I would fucking slap my hand and try to kill the fly. And then I would realize when I moved my hand that the fly wasn't even fucking there. Like, it's shit like that. That's scary as fuck. I would see spiders that I would try to fucking do the same thing with. I would try to kill them. I would see fucking shadow people. I would like look over to the other side of my room and like my basement at the time. My room was in the basement. But my room was on the left side, and on the right side was like a storage room and the bathroom. I would be on the left side, and I would look over to the right side in the pitch black, and I would see a figure standing there, like a shadow fucking figure, and that was absolutely horrifying. Like, I remember my heart was fucking racing, like, it was crazy. I was also hearing voices very regularly. Like, I would be downstairs in my room, and it would be like 1 in the morning, so there's no shot anybody in my house was up, because my parents and my sister, they go to bed at like 10, 11 p.m., so there's no shot anybody was going to be up. But I was hearing voices. I couldn't distinguish whose voices it was, but I was just hearing voices coming from upstairs, and I was hearing them. I had music blasting on my headphones, and I was still hearing them like through the music. Like, it was crazy. And I didn't know what they were saying either. Like, I would just hear like kind of like when you're like on a TV show and like, or you're watching a TV show and you hear like it's a background chatter, like background chatter almost. Like, that's what I was hearing. But I could very easily distinguish it as being a human voice. I just couldn't tell what they were actually saying. And that shit is crazy. Like, just the shit you experience on Benadryl is just so surreal. Like, it's just like The fact that a drug can make you see and experience these things is crazy. It's like Benadryl is a drug that's so powerful you don't want to fuck with it. I remember one time when I was tripping on Benadryl, I got so fucking scared of what I was experiencing that I literally just went into bed, put a pillow over my head, and went to fucking sleep, and woke up hungover as fuck the next day. Like I didn't even experience the fucking trip. I was just so scared of the voices and shit I was hearing that I literally just threw my head under a fucking pillow and called it a fucking night. And surprisingly, I was able to fall asleep. But actually that's something I should talk about. Benadryl usually, if you ever taken Benadryl for allergies, you'll know it makes you fucking sleepy. It makes you fucking drowsy as fuck. But when you take higher doses, that effect actually gets eliminated. Like you don't want to sleep. Like it becomes hard to sleep, which is why I'm so surprised I was able to. Which is like I don't understand the science behind it. If any of you guys know the science behind that, I would love to hear it in the comment section below. But yeah, when you're tripping on a higher dose Benadryl trip, you don't want to sleep, and it's so weird considering what Benadryl does to you on a regular dose. Now let's talk about the hangover. The hangover is fucking awful. You'll wake up in the next morning and it feels like your eyes are like pressing up against like your skull. Like it feels like your eyes are like bulging out of your fucking skull. Your head is throbbing. You're like dehydrated as fuck. Like your stomach hurts. Like it's like an alcohol hangover, but like way worse and with some like very unique effects. Like the eyes like being pressed up against your head. I've never had that from an alcohol hangover. Like your eye, like that shit just doesn't happen to me with alcohol, but it happens to me with Benadryl. And the hangover overall is it's just another reason why you shouldn't do this shit. Like it's just another reason to discourage you from ever trying this kind of stuff. Now let's talk about the long-term effects of Benadryl abuse. And I've done Benadryl intermittently in my life. I've never done it like consistently. Like I've tripped on Benadryl maybe 10 times in my life. But if you trip on this shit like every single day, like you will be almost guaranteed to get these effects. So I had done a little bit of research like in my past about what Benadryl does, and I've learned that even at therapeutic doses, which is like one tablet that you take for allergies, it has been linked to early stage Alzheimer's later in life. And imagine that risk from taking tablets of them like at the correct dosage for the correct use. Imagine that. Imagine taking like 35 tablets, which is something I've done in the past. 35 tablets of Benadryl. Imagine the effects on your cognition, on your brain, on your kidneys, on your liver. Imagine all that. Imagine all that fucking stress you're putting on your body by doing this shit. Like I have definitely knocked so many years off my life by doing Benadryl. I can say that I can say the same thing about a lot of drugs, but Benadryl has definitely takes the cake for the most detriment to myself. Like I still to this day, like I will lose track of conversations like midway through. Like I will just be very forgetful. My memory is shot, and I attribute it to this. My memory is fucked. There was a point in time after I would trip for maybe like a couple weeks to even months afterwards, where if I looked through the corner of my eye, I would actually see, like I wouldn't call it a real hallucination, but I would see things that weren't there. Like I would like look over the corner of my eye, see an object, and then actually like looked over to that spot, and the object wouldn't be there. Like, and I attribute that to Benadryl too. So think about all this kind of stuff before you make a decision to whether you're gonna do this shit or not. I highly, highly, highly advise you never to try this shit. But if you do, please, please, please be safe with it. Please use the calculator. Please do a lower dose. Please don't go for Ariel. Please don't go for like fucking like level 4 or whatever. Like don't do that shit. Experience what it's like. Like do like a like if you're gonna do it, do a fucking like mid-tier kind of dose. That way you like experience some of the hallucinations, but you're not full blown like in delirium, and that way you know what it's like, so you can never do that shit again. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this fucking video, leave a like, comment, subscribe down below, and yeah, I'll catch you guys on the flip side. See ya, boys.